Hello, everybody. I am Neon, and I am happy to welcome you back to the Secret Shop. I am joined, as always, by Anger and Cymen. Anger, how are you?
Hello, I'm doing fantastic.
And
I have a little bit of a headache though, so please forgive me if I'm not as energetic as I usually am.
that's cool. That's cool. And Cymen, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm just recovering from a little bit of sickness myself, but this is one of the first days that I'm feeling pretty good again. So there's that.
See, I'm really good that I just don't basically ever get sick. My immune system is like a fucking horse. So interesting fact. I mean, so I'm a scientist in real life. So the interesting side thing about all of this. Um, my mother is a doctor, and the way that things work
Mm,
is that you actually get your immune system primarily from your mother. And
yeah.
my mother is basically never sick, and she's in emergency room. She's hanging out with sick people because that's her fucking job all the time. So I got my immune system from her, so I basically never get sick. But my son and my wife, it seems like every other week my wife is sick, which is a pain in the ass. But it's useful though, because it means that I don't go down when they're all sick, but it means I have to take care of them, which kind of sucks.
Right, you're like one of those hospital bacteria that just won't die.
Yeah, man, that's me. That's me.
Just super resistant, that's what it is.
Yes, yes. What's the name of that? There's a few of them that I did some papers on those back in university. Never worry about all of that.
Right.
But I do have a warm-up question, warm-up topic for all of us to discuss before we get into our actual discussions about artifact-related stuff. And this actually relates to the
Mhm.
news. There was some news that came out today that was not artifact-related, just general real world related, where there was these celebrities that got arrested for bribing college officials for getting their kids into Yale and shit. I don't know if you guys saw this news, but one of the
No.
from Desperate Housewives and another one from Full House or whatever got arrested for this. Giving bribes to school officials. So the question that I had for
Oh
you
my
guys
god.
was, what embarrassing crime could you see yourself getting arrested for? And because I thought for myself, I'm probably notoriously bad for just some stuff with my car, especially when, in the winter there's frost on the windshield or whatever, and I just don't want to clear it off properly before I leave, because it's such a pain in the ass to do it. So I don't know if that's a crime to go and you can barely see out of your fucking windows. But maybe getting into an accident because of that, that I could see as being the embarrassing crime that I get arrested for hypothetically in the future. What about you guys?
Anger, you
Uh,
seem like the more criminal between the two of us.
what? No way!
I'm sorry, I'm more of a white collar crime myself.
uh, shit.
Shit. Well, okay.
I get arrested for being too great.
Too great. Okay. um,
Yeah.
See, I would see for you maybe it would be somebody comes up to you and says some shit, starts a fight, they're like, hey, Anger, have you seen this bristleback card? He is it's just the best card in the game, and you lose it on this motherfucker, and that's half an hour later you're in a jail cell, and that's how things go.
Yeah, and then you get a tattoo just under your eye that says nasal goo OP. And it's like little green tears under your eye. You know how they do that?
Well, what about you, Simon? What do you think?
Man, I'm so boring. I'm so boring.
Maybe you
What
get arrested
kind of
for that. Maybe
crime
that's
would
the one.
What kind of crime would they get me for? Let me think.
Criminally boring.
Yeah.
Criminally boring. Yeah. No, but let me think for just 1 second though. Is jaywalking a thing in Germany? I don't know.
What's jaywalking?
Jaywalking is when you cross when you're not supposed to at a crosswalk or whatever.
Oh, that's what I would get arrested for, being an illegal immigrant in the US.
Yes, I could see you doing that. But
There you go.
the jaywalking though, that's so. I in Canada, there's certain areas of Canada that are very different about jaywalking. I spent a decent amount of time in Montreal, where people just jaywalk all the fucking time. It's just constant.
Right.
Or in Quebec or whatever, it's all the time. And then Toronto, people just shit their pants when somebody even looks like they're about to jaywalk. It's really funny.
Yeah. In Germany, it's mostly in big cities that people don't really give a shit about red lights
Yeah.
for pedestrians, etc. But usually, Germans are very, nitpicky about that as well, especially when there's a child nearby, because
Mm.
there's this huge social pressure on everyone being a good adult around children. So when
Mm.
somebody like crosses a red light with a child present, people will be like loudly accusing them to teach their child.
Wow, they would just have no tolerance for me and my
Look at that
child.
man,
They
he
would
does
have
it
no,
wrong.
they would have no patience for me. I know the way that I act around my son. But
Look at
anyway,
that
Nobody.
man. Look at that man. He's a criminal. Don't do it like him.
because I'll like pick up my son and like jaywalk with him. Like that's what I'll do all the time. Because I have no
Yeah.
patience for that shit.
No, it's the same here. It's not vocal to the point where people point it out, but if you see a child, you don't fucking walk on red light, to
Really,
be a good example. Yeah.
really, that's surprising. I had never even thought about that. I just jaywalk all the time, so I don't give a shit.
Damn.
Well, anyway, let us get
Damn.
into the stuff that's been going on because there's actually been a little bit of news that's been going on in the artifact community. So it's very exciting to be able to talk through all of that. The two topics that we want to talk about. The first one is very directly related, and that is the news that came out that was announced on Artbuff about the Garfields team officially leaving and parting ways with Valve. And then we also had some interesting stuff that's been going on in Dota, actually.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that a lot of people have seen this, but I will read it out anyway. So the context for this is one of the writers, Rockman, who writes for Art Above, reached out to Garfield, Richard Garfield, because there had been these rumors about Garfield and his team leaving and parting ways with Valve. Rockman seemed to be actually get you contact with him and follow up with him on this conversation. So I'm actually going to read out the response letter that Richard Garfield said, gave in response to this. We weren't surprised by the layoff considering how rocky the launch was. The team was enthusiastic about the game and were confident that they had a good product, but it became clear it wasn't going to be easy to get the game to where we wanted it. The layoff makes sense for a number of reasons. To name a couple, now that the game is out, their time is more critical. So more voices within the team that you have to navigate may not be as good as making less considered decisions faster. Another, the expertise that Three Donkeys, that's the team that he's a part of, brought is less critical after listening to us for 4+ years. Both Scaff and I, Scaff is a close friend who works with the Three Donkeys things, remain optimistic about the quality of the game and have offered our feedback and advice in an ongoing gratis capacity simply because we would like to see the game do as well as we think it can. We enjoyed working with Valve, and I was impressed that their relentless focus on the quality of the game and experience being offered to the player. So this is a pretty interesting take on where things are going. There is of course some added feedback and analysis on this that Rockman offers. Of course, linked to this article in the descriptions and stuff. If you guys want to read that yourself, if you haven't had a chance. So I'll get some reactions from the two of you. How about we start with Anger? What did you think about when you saw this?
Well, I think it's about time Richard Garfield left, because,
Damn, hot takes.
no, but honestly, I'm not just saying that as a joke. It's what's the point of having him there? I can see that as, for advertisement reasons, having him at launch, being able to say, or not say, but not too loudly though, just mention that, oh yeah, and by the way, Richard Garfield, who you might know from Magic the Gathering, has also been working on Artifact. But what they don't mention is that he's also been working on 30 other card games that were failures. I don't know if they should really be bragging too much about him, but instead just have him in the start for something small to brag about. And then fucking what's he doing there? What's he bringing to the table? Absolutely nothing. Especially not even now that the game is fucking finished. They have no reason to keep him there. So I think it's about time. I'm actually surprised he wasn't gone sooner. I thought he was already
I
gone.
mean, this is one of the things that's a little bit unclear as to when exactly this happened. I think this is something that is the first time, like we had heard some rumors that he had left, I think back in January-ish, and that this is the first time that we had like a fully 100% confirmed statement on that subject. So whether or not it was in January, in March, in, I don't know, December, like it could have been any of the above. So that's not clear to me at least.
Yeah. Well, first of all, credit where credit is due. Garfield is a very good game designer. And I do think that one of the reasons that Artifact's gameplay is so solid, like from the base, so to say, is because of his expertise. Like the guy quite literally wrote books on game design, and his pedigree cannot be ignored, I think. However, I will say that, as he says it himself in this little reply email, it makes sense for him to be, laid off right now, if you can call it that. Because he is a game designer, he isn't really a video game dev at all. Uh, it's not really his job to keep balancing cards. It's not really his job to work on any sort of game clients, etc. The last email that was relevant from him was the one where he was basically saying that he hasn't been in house at Valve for a long time, anyways. The last time he was
Mm.
brought over was shortly before the release of the game, when they were already designing the first expansion for the game. So he does have a lot of influence there, apparently, as well. But apart from that, he really isn't needed, since his expertise isn't currently as critical to Artifact. What Artifact needs right now is more client features, balance, and all sorts of things that people have been crying about the business model.
Yeah.
Right? So I think it is just a sound business decision to let him go. There's no reason to keep these guys on the payroll as contractors when they are literally off making Keyforge.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's a lot of reactions I think that are possible to this. I think that both of your reactions are make a lot of sense to me. One of the things that I've always that was actually a little bit strange about this is the way in which they marketed the like Garfield's role in the game, because it was something that seemed like this like super central piece of what they were saying about the game. Is like, oh, Richard Garfield, Richard Garfield, Richard Garfield. They didn't shut up about it, like that. Like, and especially if you go back to their blog, things that they did on their website, because they had him being like one of the central characters in the various videos that they ran with it.
Yeah.
So like that's one of these things that ends up being slightly strange to me, because especially because I always had the impression that Richard Garfield wouldn't stay with the project long term, or at least in the same capacity as something like Mark Rosewater is with Magic, or I mean, like there's various other like Ice Frog as being like the Dota guy. Like clearly there are a bunch of other guys and like people who work on Dota, but like he is seen as being the visionary that or like the main ideas guy that is the core of that team. And I always thought that Richard wouldn't be that guy for Artifact.
Exactly.
And I felt that it was very strange that they tried to position him as being this, outward facing figurehead. And then so when he left, it was like I kind of expected it, but it was a little bit weird given that context.
Yeah, it's true. Especially even now when you go to playartifact.com, it says Artifact. First thing, basically, a collaboration between legendary game designer Richard Garfield and Valve. Literally first sentence on the website. So they definitely wanted to push that name, even though, funnily enough, they said themselves that they didn't want to do that initially.
Mm-hmm.
Like that is why they waited like more than half a year after Artifact's initial announcement, like the legendary moment, to announce that he was involved. They said they didn't want to push the game because of a name, but it really looks like they tried at some point. If I may look at his email again, it's a very professional email, but personally, I would definitely say that this doesn't look at all like some, you know, unexpected layoff to him. I don't think he expected Artifact to be like his job position for the next years. As we said, he was already out of office working on Keyforge and all that. The only thing that in this whole email that I would consider slightly judgmental, perhaps, like if we really want to go into like word analysis, is less considered decisions. To me, that's the only
Hmm.
phrase that sounds a little judgmental, just a little bit, because he's basically implying in that sentence, to name a couple, now that the game is out there, time is more critical. So, more voices within the team that you have to navigate may not be as good as making less considered decisions faster.
Yeah, and that's actually something that I was going to
Emphasis mine.
say is like an interesting element to this too, because one of the other elements I think was almost like the first sign that we saw of being a little bit of a divergence from the vision of Garfield
Yeah.
came back when we had that first balance patch. Because
Yep.
we remember, like way back in like the spring, there was an interview in which Scaff and Garfield said, we don't see any reason why cards should be balance adjusted basically ever,
Yeah.
unless they're totally oppressive. And basically, the community made it very clear that that wasn't what they wanted to. That wasn't what they wanted. So then Valve changed, and it was interesting at that moment of like, well, this seems to go against the vision of what Garfield and Scaff had in mind. So what does that
Mm.
mean for their relationship? And I wouldn't be. And part of the thing also, like going back to even the comments that Anger made about, Garfield's pedigree. If you actually look at the details of his resume, his role in games recently, especially, like he hasn't worked on games as a service like like for instance, with Magic the Gathering, he hasn't been active in Magic the Gathering for the most part over the last decade. Like he's collaborated on a couple of individual sets, but like this kind of given some ideas about cards and kind of moving off from it. He hasn't, for instance, been in a ongoing role, game as a service type of a
Yeah.
product, which is a very different like universe, a very different reality than game design was back in the 90s, for example.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that this first balance patch really was like the first step towards a very different mindset behind the design of Artifact. Um, and I think that it really implies that there may be more changes in the future. I personally wouldn't just put this on like Scarf and Garfield, because to me it looked like, for example, Gabe Newell was very enamored with the idea of having like a real card economy in Steam as well. But here's the thing, like I personally, maybe I'm just a fanboy, right? But I personally don't attribute the business model behind Artifact with greed. I just think that there were a lot of like super classic TCG fans inside of Valve that have fun with the whole stock trading meta game of card games as well. Like they see real value in that, which a lot of video gamers don't. They just see like a lot of money scheming. And yeah, I think at this point it's fair to say that something about the business model must be done, or something about cards as items, so to say, must change for that model to be friendlier. Um, but I personally just don't attribute greed with it. However, um, I will say that it is pretty clear that Artifact was designed very much in line with Garfield's Manifesto. Um, some of you may remember because it was getting posted on Reddit every couple of days for a very long time. Garfield's Manifesto is basically this article that he wrote about his personal code of ethics when it comes to play to win, etc. Where it basically says if you can't buy power limitlessly and there's like a spending cap, you're okay.
Anger, you have any thoughts on all of this?
No, I think I said what I wanted to say.
No other Garfield flaming you want to get in there before we move off of it? Might be your last opportunity.
I don't know. I think it's very ironic that they call him the legendary card game designer when you've only heard of like one card game he out of the 30 he's participated in.
Yeah.
And like I hadn't even heard of him before Artifact. Like that's
Oof.
how I got introduced to him.
Wow, you sound like someone who hasn't played Half-Life or something.
Yeah. So,
But like I'm a big fan of Magic, but like I don't know, like I
Ironic.
I feel like okay, and I don't want to flame him too much because he's probably a really cool guy, very talented and all that. But like I feel like he is probably no, I don't know. I'm not gonna flame him more. I'm done.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. I mean, it is one of those things though, at the end of the day that like, touting him as being, the expert on card games and then having the game that struggle so much at the launch does leave kind of a bad taste in your mouth. Like, well, really, was he the best guy?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm trying to say. Like, I feel like he is very much talk rather than like what he actually like. People just throw out legendary game designer or legendary card game designer. But like, what has he done that made like other than participating in Magic? There's nothing that lets him like fit into that category. And like I feel like he's more of a deity than he is an actual.
I mean, he designed many other games as well, like Robo Rally and King of Tokyo.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, he did.
The fuck is
I mean,
that?
like the thing is that this is part of the thing that I'm saying. Though,
If you like board games,
they're very different kind of games, though, right? Like that's the thing I'm trying to say is that King of Tokyo and Robo Rally, like these are board games, tabletop games designed to be social. Like Artifact and your competitive gaming, eSports, is a very different world than tabletop games are nowadays. Like, and I think that gap has really just grown over the last, like every year, basically. So the fact that you can like say like, what has he done for like this type of game? And the only one that you can point to is being Magic, and he hasn't really been actively involved in that in the past decade, and at least in like a big picture, mentality sort of way. Like, I mean, I think that's a valid criticism of like, is he really the kind of guy that you want to be running a project around? Because there's very clearly been some fundamental misunderstandings that are like based in like the core of what Artifact is in my mind. I mean, I still like the game. Obviously, I still think that it has a lot of stuff to offer, and I think that I'm still optimistic about the future of the project. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing the podcast.
yeah.
But like it's clear that there
Are
are.
you saying you're not in it for the money?
all of the
all this cash,
all of the mad cash.
Neon's in it for the long haul. Baby.
Yeah, man, we're. I'm here out of sheer stubbornness and like want to be proven right of this game like having the potential that I think that it does. But I mean, I just think that it is just very unsettling, and it is very like uncomfortable to have this character, this individual who's been deified, then just be like, okay, peace out after like one set. So like, I mean, we can move on from it if we don't want to flame him any further. I think we got that point across. But
I got one more thing to say.
Okay, yeah, I got you off now.
So no, listen.
Yeah, go.
Okay, so we all agree that Richard Garfield. Okay, so let's say he's a negative, right? He's more of a reputation than he is actual action, But so is Valve, okay?
Ooh.
So is Valve.
Nah, I'm getting off this train.
Listen,
Goodbye,
listen,
I'm off.
Yeah, let it go.
Just listen, okay? So we have both Richard Garfield and Valve, two big names they're just names. Maybe like a few decades ago they were relevant, they did some big stuff, impressive stuff, but lately they're all just big names that rely on that. They're big names and just do whatever the fuck they want. That are super outdated and they think it's just gonna work just because they're a big cool name. Now, this isn't only just a criticism saying that they have two big useless names that don't actually make a good product, because with quick, simple maths, you will realize that negative plus negative equals positive.
Oh, damn. She brought it back,
That is
boy.
why they have Richard Garfield, to equal out Valve.
So now that he's
Wow.
gone, the whole thing will just fall apart, is what you're saying.
I got
No, like that
debated.
was just during creating
Sure,
the game.
sure.
They needed the double negative, but now that the game is finished, and can start flourishing, they can kick him out, and then the positives can start coming in
Sure.
in the long haul.
Okay,
Damn.
okay. I like it.
Double edge plus Rend armor.
Exactly. That's what we're saying here. This is like we'll have that as the stable, the very easy to understand title of the episode. Garfield leaving is exactly like Rend armor plus double edge. But anyway, let us move on to another topic. This is actually not so much artifact related. I guess it overlaps with artifact in some important ways, and that is about the new hero, the new playable character that came out in Dota, which is Mars. So this was a hero that we talked about back in around TI, that they announced that he would be coming. Everyone was really excited about it. We hypothesized that maybe this was a stealthy way to bring Sorla Khan into the game. And the character is actually out now finally, and we see him and everything. Is definitely not Sorla Khan. So I'm interested in getting some both impressions about the character himself, and like in terms of just his gameplay and everything like that, and then talk a little bit about maybe how it overlaps with your expectations and the lore, etc., like that. Maybe Cymen, can you just kind of describe first just the playable character himself of what's going on there?
Yeah. So actually, you and I were in the chat when he came out. So you got some of my hot takes before I really dove in there. And at first, the word I used was uninspired. Like, that was my hot take before really looking into things. But that opinion has really changed because they put a lot of effort into this one. Well, first of all, there isn't much overlap with Artifact at all. It is pretty much the same kind of deal as Grimstroke, where this character just builds more lore within the universe of Dota, especially around the conflict of the ancients and the whole gods thing, which I'm gonna get into in a second. First of all, he is the son of Zeus, who is in both Dota and Artifact. So they are doing the whole Greco-Roman pantheon thing, where the
It
god of
triggers me so much that they can't decide. Like, either go Greek or go Roman. Fucking decide.
Haha! They debated you because here
really?
it comes. Yeah, they did. They did. They actually answer that question in the game. Turns out that he changed his name. Mars is actually the name that he chose for himself now that he has forsaken his father and the old pantheon. So the implication is that he was born as Ares, the Greek god of war, and is now basically running over to the more Roman pantheon and calls himself Mars.
I like this idea now. They just have different guys bailing from the different pantheons and joining the new one. It's this Greek pantheon. So last year, I'm gonna go hop on a train.
He literally
drive over to Rome.
literally
Start going off with those guys. That's exciting. Maybe next week I'll just hang out with Thor and my Odin and shit. That'll be awesome. Just jump around pantheon to pantheon. Osiris. We're hooking up next week. You're gonna lay down a sick gem or something like that. I like that idea.
He does actually call his father's pantheon archaic.
Okay.
And there's, oh my god, there's so much trash talk between him and Zeus. Because here's the thing, when they had Zeus's voice actor over for Artifact, they recorded some lines for Dota as well. So Zeus actually got more lines in Dota now. Not just for his son Mars, but also for the other new heroes, Mariska the Dark Willow, Pangolier, and Grimstroke.
Oh.
Yeah, he does. That surprised me as well. And there's some class A banter in there, like some classic father son, well, no son of mine shit. It's really
Is there any
funny.
cool dad jokes?
Dad jokes, no, but just a lot of patronizing. Just a lot of this is just a phase, boy. Literally.
Wait, so Mars is a rebelling, edgy, emo teenager?
Not emo, but just
I don't know, man. His hair looks pretty
just
emo.
rebelling, yeah.
Like, got all that red paint all over him. He's kind of acting out. I don't know. I can see him with a leather jacket and a mohawk. You don't know me.
Yeah, pretty much. But here's the thing. The way that he plays is he has all these knockback spells, basically, and he can pin people to trees and buildings with his spear that he throws. And he builds this huge arena of blood in which all of that works. So he can pin people to the walls of his arena where they get stabbed by little soldiers. And when he builds his arena of blood as his ultimate, there is a melody playing from an opera. And the piece that is playing is, of course, that of Mars, because the opera is about the planets and the movements of the planets.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And
they went pretty deep.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah, they went pretty deep with that. Like, they explained the whole Pantheon thing, why he's called Mars, even though his dad is called Zeus. They made him a super fun. And here's the thing, with all the newer heroes, and the Arcanas, actually, Valve has been putting in these monologues for heroes, where if you spam click them, you get almost like an artifact card lore monologue out of the heroes. And he actually has several. He has one where he talks about just leaving his dad and the old Pantheon behind and choosing a new name for himself and all that. And then there is one where basically the whole story with him is that he used to be a pretty bad guy, like think God of War, right? Just blood and carnage. And now he's like trying to be more mature, trying to be like the hero kind of guy, trying to be good for the mortals. But he has this story where he talks about battling a mind controlling witch. And he just describes gleefully how she was like controlling those poor farmers as well. And to get to her, he had to like kill a couple of them as well. But then he defeated her and he was like, man, there must have been so many songs in my name as they gratefully collected their dead. Because he doesn't get it quite yet. Like, he's not good at being the good guy yet.
Sure.
And it's super funny. It's just really well written.
Yeah.
Like, when it comes to his visual design, opinions diverge. Some people say he's not stylized enough. Other people say lol hero, blah, blah, blah. But really, it's just about cosmetics, guys. They're just going to sell cosmetics.
It's all about the hats, man. That hat game.
Yeah, it's all about the hats.
Yeah.
Just give him a vanguard as a shield.
Yeah, no. So he
and all that.
He seems like an interesting character. Like, from what I've seen so far, he looks really good. I mean, I think we mentioned this with Grimstroke too, is that oftentimes when the heroes are first released, that they're a little bit overpowered. But we'll kind of have to see how that goes over the course of iterative balance adjustments. Like, I mean, like, I'm not saying like he's busted or whatever, but like from what I saw, he looked like he was performing really well. And it's also, I think, a little bit things like dealing with the arena and getting used to the mechanics of the arena. I think is probably going to take a little while for, especially, I don't know, like intermediate players to get a really handle on the best ways to, for instance, counter that. So interesting to see how that kind of evolves going forward. I will say though that I am disappointed they didn't do that overlap with artifact. I'm still really confused as to why, because that just feels like it's such a softball to me of like you could have done things that way. I mean, maybe they're trying to actually time things with maybe a release of a future set or something like that. But it just like you could have just very easily done a lot of the same stuff with Sorrel Khan, and it would make a lot of sense to me. I don't know.
Yeah. As you guys know, I was like one of those guys up to the last minute who was pretty sure that there would be at least some sort of crossover, which is why my initial reaction was basically that of, eh. But in the end, I turned around on him. Like, they just put a lot of effort into it. Like, he even sings his own fucking theme song. And it's basically also a reference to Venture Brothers, where they use the same fucking opera thing for one of their most iconic scenes. It's just good. It's just a new Dota hero. He's super fun. It's really good.
Anger, do you have any impressions on Mars?
No, not really.
Haven't had a chance.
I'm a bit disappointed that he's not connected to Artifact, but at the same time, I respect that they're still working on Dota as an independent game, and I like his concept of being like front or bristle front.
Yeah.
Yeah. Two things that are slightly connected to Artifact. First, he claims that Quoich wouldn't exist without him.
So he's the one who's raising the dead.
So the Fields of Endless Carnage are... He basically claiming that the Fields of Endless Carnage are
That
his
makes so much sense, though, because in
deal.
the trailer he's like raising the dead.
It does. And the other thing, now that Dota has basically, a god of war, the question is, who the fuck is the Legion praying to in the Temple of War? And
but
why is
that's
it a
why
she?
I was disappointed, because it's so obviously not Mars.
Exactly. Yeah, so I don't know if they're gonna retcon that, if the Legion is just literally praying to a false god, or if, in a way, Mars is the self-proclaimed god of war, just like his father is the self-proclaimed god of thunder in the Dota universe. That's why he has all that beef with Storm Spirit, because he isn't like just default god of thunder in this world. Like there is no Greece
Or
in
the god of
Dota.
war is just straight up the dire. And the god of creation that the bulls were worshipping is the Radiant, and the god of war that the Bronze Legion introduces is the Dire.
Well, I'm not gonna get into that sort of speculation. Maybe it's his freaking mom, because Zeus mentions his mom now, so...
Mars' mummy. That's the god of war. Mars' mummy. Very good, very good. Okay, so I think that's everything then for today. Something I just want to quickly plug on my way up the door. There was an article and slash video that I did a few months back on the game Gods Unchained that I think a lot of people checked out. If you were maybe a fan of the podcast, you might have seen it back then. I actually did a follow-up article, or a video rather, on that that just came out the other day, because I had a chance to talk with some of the designers behind that game. So that was an interesting little thing. If you guys want to see that, it's a very different game and stuff like that. But if you're interested in seeing some other stuff that I'm doing, that is one that you can check out. Anger, do you have anything going on over the next little while you wanted to plug?
No, I'm just doing the same thing I'm always doing. Streaming and making videos.
You gotta plug your shit more.
No, she doesn't.
You gotta plug your shit
she doesn't
more. You gotta do more advertising.
Can...
Did you even plug your shit now that you're featured on Valve News Network and have like tens of thousands of people
I was
watching?
on Valve News Network. Yeah. Ugh, I don't know. I feel like there's no way to plug yourself without sounding like a piece of shit.
Says this right after I plug myself. I love it. No, I'm just joking though. No. I mean,
just plug yourself, Neon.
I'm all about plugging myself.
You know what, Neon? Fucking unplug yourself, bitch.
Damn. Fucking power down.
Probably should have plugged myself a little bit more. That actually would probably be healthy, but that's not the lifestyle that I live. I'm here to be well plugged. But that'll do it then for today, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care.
See ya.
Peace.